On December 30th, 2019, a court in Shenzhen passed judgment on He Jiankui, 3 years in prison, a fine of 3 million yuan, approximately $434,000, conviction for illegal medical practice, 3 years, for editing the human germline, for creating 3 children who carry permanent genetic alterations with unknown long-term consequences, for forging ethics approvals, for deceiving the parents of those children, for potentially altering the human gene pool. 3 years. Whether that is justice or the illusion of justice, dressed in the clothing of a proportionate legal response, is a question we'll return to. But first, what happened when those 3 years were up? The trial of He Jiankui was swift, and by the standards of Chinese criminal proceedings, relatively transparent. The verdict made explicit what investigators had found. He had acted for personal gain and fame. He had raised his own private funding specifically to circumvent oversight. He had organized a team, some of whom were also convicted, and had forged the documentation that was supposed to protect the participants in his experiment. 2 colleagues were also sentenced to lesser terms and smaller fines. They had been part of the technical operation of the experiment. Their culpability was judged to be real, but secondary. He Jiankui accepted the verdict and was sent to prison. For a period, he disappeared from public view. His university had already fired him. His companies had distanced themselves from him. In April 2022, He Jiankui walked out of prison. What emerged was not what most of the scientific community had hoped for or expected. There was no extended silence, no period of reflection, no statement of genuine accountability. Instead, He Jiankui began seeking out media. He gave an interview to MIT Technology Review. He spoke to NPR. He attended conferences. He compared gene editing therapies to vaccines. He said that in 50 years, embryo editing would be as common as IVF. He was not presenting as a man who had done something wrong. He was presenting as a man who had done something early. I believe society will eventually accept that embryo gene editing is a good thing, he said. I'm waiting for society to accept that. He didn't just wait. He built. He set up the Jiankui He Lab, first in Beijing, then reportedly relocating to Hainan, a southern Chinese island province known for more relaxed regulatory environments. He announced research programs in Duchenne muscular dystrophy and Alzheimer's disease, legitimate, important diseases. He recruited staff. He accepted funding from private donors he continues to refuse to name. He stated publicly that he hoped to begin human clinical trials in 2025. Scientists who follow gene editing research closely reacted with alarm, not because researching DMD is wrong, but because his actual track record is thin. Kiran Musunuru, a gene editing expert, was direct. The odds of he producing safe, clinically validated therapy on this timeline and budget are essentially zero, and attempting it anyway is not ambition. It's recklessness in new clothes. The children He Jiankui created carry the consequences of his experiment for life. Every cell of their bodies contains genetic alterations that have never been characterized in a human being before. Those alterations could, in principle, be passed on to their children. The experiment, the real experiment, the biological one, has no end date. It will unfold over decades, across generations, 3 years. Critics have argued that China's prosecution was ultimately calibrated to manage international reputation damage, rather than to establish a precedent commensurate with the actual harm done. The gap between the severity of what was done and the severity of the punishment is not just a Chinese legal problem. It is a global governance problem. No international law prohibited what he did. No treaty with enforcement power existed. The scientific community's consensus carried enormous moral weight and exactly 0 legal teeth. He Jiankui tested the system. The system responded, and then the system let him go. In episode 5, we ask the question that the sentencing didn't answer. What ethical lines did He Jiankui cross? And are those lines actually secure today? Because the technology has only gotten better since 2018, the barriers have not necessarily kept pace. And He Jiankui is not the only person watching. Visit unbedsidemanners.com to learn more about this case and other stories from the medical frontier.